Welcome inside Mr. Small's Theater for this edition of Geick's Got Game. I'm Matt Geica. Thank you for joining me on this Friday morning, September 28th, 2018. My wife and I beginning our second decade of marriage today. And, well, we totally missed out on any celebration yesterday. We've been on separate parts of the continent, it seems like, lately. So, I'm playing the single dad role. I apologize if I was a bit late. I am a bit late here with this one. Sometimes your little one gets the sniffles, and you got to scramble around in the morning to get him off to daycare and to get myself out the door and down here to Millvale. But I am here, and with that apology offered, looking forward to the next 52 minutes or so of high-quality sports content here on the River's Edge. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com, and we stream on riversedgepgh.com, both audio and video. And you can find it on Facebook Live as well. On my page, Matt Geitka Media, MattGajtka. If you're watching, you can see the Twitter handle as well, right here on the screen. Matt Geitka is where you can find me. And the show, as far as I'm concerned, is already off to a nice start because we've had some interaction on Twitter. I offered up a question regarding today's show, and I received several responses there. And as always, I'm looking on Facebook throughout the show to get back to you and offer up my perspective on the opinions that you fire that way, and I'll try to prompt you throughout the program with a few questions. I do have some questions. It's a very inquisitive edition of Geick's Got Game here on the River's Edge. Number one, and the question that I asked explicitly on Twitter that I'm speaking about, in which sport is it most fun to root for the United States? And I bring that up, it's very topical, because as of right now, the United States golf team, a collection of golf pros, are playing a collection of golf pros from Europe in the Ryder Cup. And that got started about 2 o'clock this morning Eastern time. They're playing over in France. And if you know me, you know I'm a big golf fan. And this show represents a line of demarcation because after this show, after this weekend, there's really no big golf event that I'm going to be tuned into until the new year. So that's a little sad, but it's been pretty intense over the last few weeks with PGA Championship, the Open Championship over in Britain, and the FedEx Cup playoffs, which were capped by the return victory for Tiger Woods, his first win in 5 years. And I want to get to Tiger a bit later in the episode and discuss whether he's your sports story of the year, because I think he is, barring something totally unforeseen in the final 3 months of 2018. But getting back to the initial question, the Ryder Cup is very unique in golf. It's, well, first of all, it's interesting because an individual sport becomes a team sport. And golf can be a team sport, but mostly we watch it on an individual basis, and we consume it, and we play it on an individual basis. But it's amped up to such a degree, it has very much that team sport feel and that Olympics feel, right? And I've discussed how I love watching the Olympics, how I love watching international competitions like the World Cup in soccer. But when it comes to rooting for the U.S., if we're dominant in a sport, I don't find it as fun. That's just me. Maybe you're different. I like it better when we're competitive, but also when we have a chance to win. So my question was, what do you like to root for, or what sport do you like to root for the U.S. in the most? Is it golf, where Europe has actually controlled the Ryder Cup for much of the past 2 or 3 decades? Is it, for instance, the Soccer World Cup, where the U.S. is the underdog, or in this case, this past summer, not even participating, and it's more about how they match up in terms of the rest of the world, and for the most part, it's not very good. Is it hockey, where we've won championships in the past, but not a ton of them? However, I think we can expect a little bit higher standard of performance and competitiveness compared to, say, soccer. Or is it something like basketball, where we should win, and we often do win, whether it's the World Basketball Championships or the Olympic Games? Baseball, World Baseball Classic. Again, U.S. very competitive. They won the last World Baseball Classic. Do you like the sports that we rule in, or do you like the sports where we have to be the plucky underdog? That's my question. That's my big pertinent question, at least, the top of the show question on today's Geick's Got Game. Also coming up later, like I said, Tiger Woods, a discussion there. I was following closely all year long, and it culminated in the win last week at the Tour Championship. That was exciting for me, and I know so many Tiger devotees out there. But does it resonate across the board? Do you feel like it is the sports story of the year? And if you were going to check out on the Pirates, I was saying this was a line of demarcation show. After this weekend, there will be no more baseball for the Pirates as we transition to the postseason. But Jung Ho Kang, who has not been seen in a Pirates uniform in 2 years, nearly 2 years, in fact, he will be in uniform and playing this weekend in Cincinnati. So if you're looking for some reason to watch or pay attention to the Bucs as they try to lock up a winning record, number one, but also they're going to put their oft-troubled third baseman back into play, an oft-injured third baseman over the past year or so. Jung Ho Kang returns. How do you feel about that? I'll tell you how I feel about that later in the program. Also, I welcome a featured guest for the first time in a couple of weeks. My RMU media relations colleague, Matt Popchock, joins me to discuss the local hockey scene. Matt has covered high school hockey a lot in the area, and that gets going. The PIHL league play begins this upcoming week. But more pertinently to him, he works with the Robert Morris women's hockey team, which is coming off a back-to-back College Hockey America Conference championships. In the regular season, they made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. You could argue over the past 2 years, they're the best local college program, bar none. Men or women, whatever sport you might want to talk about. The women over at Neville Island have been absolutely dominant, and they return to the ice this weekend with a home series against nationally ranked St. Lawrence. That's all on the way on Gike's Got Game. But as for that top question, I'm going to argue for golf. Number one, because of the interesting format. It's not golf as we're used to seeing it. It's rabid crowds. It's, in a lot of ways, jingoistic, obnoxious behavior in the stands and sometimes from the competitors. But you get to see these players who, for the most part, keep it buttoned down all year long, let loose and get emotional, play as a team. That's fun for me. And it's also fun for me because in the context of rooting for the U.S., we have the stronger lineup, and we have a really good chance of winning the Ryder Cup, as we did 2 years ago in Minnesota. It's on foreign soil this time. And, well, right now, things are tilting toward the European squad. They might have a lead after day one of competition, as they're ahead in all four of the alternate shot matches on the course right now over in France. But it's usually competitive, and I can expect the U.S. to at least make a decent run at it. You can't say the same about soccer. In the World Cup this past year, it was rough for the men, obviously. They had to sit it out, and we all had to pick different teams. If you were into that sort of thing, I picked Poland, the land of my ancestors, as you know, and they didn't get out of the group stage anyway. So it was a very similar experience, in fact, for me, for pulling for the United States on the men's side. On the women's side, though, yeah, we've done pretty darn well, haven't we? And maybe more nations are starting to take women's soccer seriously and pouring resources and time and energy into that side of things. So it's not going to be as easy as it used to be. Not that it's ever been easy, but the U.S. has only had a couple of other real challengers over the years for World Cup and for Olympic gold supremacy on the women's side of things. But for soccer, yeah, there is that excitement because the entire world gets up for it. It's not just about, in the case of the Ryder Cup, the U.S. and Europe. It's not just about in certain sports like hockey. There are really no Asian teams to speak of outside of this past Olympic Games was different because the Korean team got free entry. And it depends on whether you consider Russia Asian or not. But, yeah, China's not a power. Japan's not a power. Korea's not a power. There aren't any... really, the Eastern Hemisphere, for the most part, doesn't pay that much attention from, say, the Middle East on eastward. And, of course, Africa doesn't have any ice hockey representation on the highest level. So it's more of like a half-the-world type of sport. Latin America, too, is sitting that one out. It's more us and Europe, very similar to the golf. So the World Cup, at least, does let us know where we stand on the world stage, truly the world stage, where every country is invested in soccer or football or footy or whatever you want to call it. Every nation is incentivized to succeed there, and they have it as part of their culture in some form or fashion. So, yeah, we're the underdog there, no doubt about that. So if you like underdog stuff, you probably like soccer the most. Hockey is kind of in between. And like I said, golf, we probably should win more than we do. So we're more of the disappointing favorite in golf, which, as far as the U.S. goes in international sporting competitions, that's kind of unique, right? Because, like I said, basketball went through a tough stretch about 15 years ago, but now we're back on top and we're back in the rightful spot where we should be, where we feel like we should be in winning every time. And, well, it's the same deal or a similar deal with baseball now. The World Baseball Classic, we have the Latin American countries to compete with. We have Japan to compete with. But, yeah, we are, at least most recently, at the top of the game, at the top of worldwide competition. So for me, I suppose it all depends on what do you like. Do you like to be the team that's not expected to win and can surprise pleasantly? Do you play the expectations game, in other words? Or do you like being the team that should win? Do you like having the powerhouse team and expecting a win in that way? So I suppose it is expectations, either one way or the other. And I'm biased toward golf and hockey because I play those two sports more than I do any other. And so I feel like I associate with what these players are going through. But like I said, no other sport has this sudden switch in complete nature of the sport like golf does, going from individuals to teams, at least on the first 2 days of the tournament. It is truly team play. You're there out there with a partner and leaning on your partner. The last day is singles. It's 1v1, but it's still part of that team concept. So that novelty effect, I think, puts golf over the top for me and makes the U.S. the most fun to root for in the sport of golf for me, compared to hockey, compared to soccer, although it's all enjoyable. And outside of the Olympics, in fact, I feel like the Olympics might have lost some of their momentum with the realities economically that the Olympic Games don't help out and they're not really worth hosting for a lot of countries out there. And also for the growing stature of things like the World Cup of Soccer. Heck, the World Cup of Hockey, too. Let's not leave that one out. And I hope they do continue to play that in the off-Olympic even-numbered years because it's enjoyable as well. I like to see best on best, and we should have more international play, in my opinion, in hockey, just like we do in soccer, and have more emphasis on international play, because it does mix up the sports calendar and it gives you something else to pull for. If your club team, if your pro team that you root for isn't doing well, then you also have that alternative. So for now, I'll put golf at the top of the list, hockey a close second, and, well, soccer, depending on if it's men's or women's. If it's women's, yeah, it's a heck of a lot of fun if you're a U.S. fan. If you're a men's soccer fan, and I'm sure there's a lot of crossover there between the two, but if you are a men's soccer fan, then it's been mostly heartbreak. In a lot of cases, it's been soul-searching for many of us. What do we have to do to get our country back in the game? So the U.S. isn't even in the game on the men's side in the international realm, at least for right now, and at least for the past World Cup cycle. So for that reason, I drop soccer down and maybe even drop it off the board. Let me know what you think. Facebook, Twitter, I'm out there. Matt Gajka, again, is where you can find me. Just search the name, MattGajtka. Coming up next in the second period of Guy's Got Game, I welcome my RMU colleague Matt Popchock to talk about the local amateur hockey scene. The RMU women get back on the ice on Neville Island this weekend with 2 games. Also high school hockey starting again, and it's becoming more and more of a vibrant situation here in Western Pennsylvania. And if you like junior hockey, the USHL's Fall Classic is taking place up at the Lemieux Sports Complex. So, yeah, hockey in period number 2 of Guy's Got Game. Keep it right here on the River's Edge.
Hey folks, it's Mike Sasson of The Mike Sasson Show. Me and Alex, my producer extraordinaire, looked at the landscape of internet radio and figured if we want to make it, we've got to work at least an hour earlier. Now on at 9 a.m. every Tuesday on the River's Edge, a new kind of radio.
Last show for September here on the River's Edge. Well, at least my last show for September. Don't want to speak for anybody else. On this Friday, September 28th, 2018. Coming to you from Mr. Small's Theater in Millvale, Pennsylvania. I am Matt Gajka. This is Guy's Got Game. And if you know me, you know I'm into hockey. I work over at Robert Morris, in fact, once again, representing the men's hockey program. My counterpart, as far as happenings at Neville Island at the Island Sports Center goes, is Matt Popchock. And he is on the line to discuss, among other things, the RMU Women's Hockey program, which, as I made the argument in the first segment of this show, I think they are the most successful local college program on the Division I basis over the past 2 years. They won the regular season in College Hockey America the last 2 seasons, and they also made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago, winning the postseason crown. So, Matt, I don't know if you're going to argue with me on that point, but thanks for joining the show, and also thank you for, being a representative of hockey in many ways. You've covered high school hockey. You've now covered college hockey. This has got to be a fun time of the year for you.
It is, and it's an honor to serve, and it's an honor to serve a program that is clearly very well-peopled and well-governed and well-run. And like you said, it is one of the programs offered by Robert Morris that has proven in recent years that, a smaller school with a different kind of resources can still thrive and still be competitive and maybe in the long haul compete for national championships. How far we are away from that is anybody's guess. But Paul Colantino and his staff have really revolutionized the women's program there in the time that they've been there. And what they're doing on a year-to-year basis is impressive to see and fun to be a part of.
Now, tell me about your experience with the women's program and just involved in college hockey in general. I'm sure you're probably like me. You grew up following the Penguins and you grew up following pro hockey and you thought that was the end-all, be-all, but then you realize there's so much more to it at the grassroots level, and you and I have both worked in and around amateur hockey. And for me, getting involved in college hockey made me realize, number one, how much fun it is, and number two, how much I think people in the Pittsburgh area might be missing out on a different angle on for what is for many people, their favorite sport. So how has your perspective on college hockey and women's hockey in particular changed in the couple of years you've been doing this?
Well, it's made me appreciate what we have around here. And, the great thing about working alongside you at Robert Morris is that it's given me an opportunity to sort of tap people on the shoulder and remind them, hey, this place, this institution has something on the hockey landscape that, as of now, can't be gotten anywhere else in southwestern Pennsylvania. That, of course, being Division I hockey, men's and women's. And it's funny, my first real memorable exposure, my first prolonged exposure to college hockey, if you will, was the very first Three Rivers Classic, which happened, of course, I believe in December 2012 during an NHL labor dispute at the time. And the Robert Morris men ended up winning that event. Very memorable. They got a signature win out of that against Miami of Ohio and another one against Penn State, if memory serves. And, from there on, that sort of strengthened my conviction in knowing that I was part of something good. Coming out of college, I grew up a Penguins fan, as you might guess, and I got an opportunity to serve the PIHL in a number of very innovative ways, which was a great thrill. And I'm getting to do the same thing again at Robert Morris. So it's been quite a ride, and getting to work with the young women we have in our women's program has been a lot of fun.
What stood out to you about the RMU Women and how they've been able to rack up the back-to-back 20-win seasons, and now they have 3 of them this decade, but it does feel like a program on the rise, and I don't know if it's just coincidence, but you've happened to be there for some huge moments in program history. So what do you think gives them the edge there?
Well, I think it's I think Paul and Logan Biddle and Chelsea Walkland and that whole crew have done a phenomenal job growing the recruiting footprint of the program. They've broken new ground in the time they've been there, and based on what I know about how Paul came to Robert Morris, he was very tactful about knowing where the program had to be better in certain areas in order to get where it is today. And to this point, they've just executed that. As far as the immediate product and the team on the ice is concerned, I think the thing that they have going for them going into this season, and that has made them competitive the last couple of years, is a very strong and very talented leadership group. They have players with international experience. Of course, J.C. Gebhardt and Kirsten Welch were with Brittany Howard and Team Canada's National Women's Development Camp over the summer. And defensively, what makes this group unique is they are versatile. They have excelled the last couple of years at getting offense from their defense. And, of course, if you've ever seen Welsh play, she certainly has a lot to do with that. But they found some other players as well that hopefully they appreciate those players while they still have them, because I think there's a couple in there that could be going places.
Right. It is fun to track now all the RMU alums who are making their way in pro hockey and international hockey. It's really terrific, and led by Brittany Howard, the program's all-time top gun. So, and you listed some of the ways they're going to try, or some of the players that they have that will help them try to keep that level up this year. Just in terms of women's hockey, Matt, we've watched it on the international level, and, well, thank God the U.S. took home the gold at Pyeongchang.
Yeah,
that was fantastic. No offense to our Canadian friends, many of whom are in the RMU men's and women's programs, but it was about time for that gold medal to come back home. But overall, I find myself, I think, uniquely captivated by the women's brand of hockey with how technical and skill-oriented it is. And I think if you did grow up around here appreciating the style of play the Penguins had, with all the top players they've thrown out on the ice, and how skill-oriented that has been for the past 20, 30 years, I think the women's game is very similar to a lot of those values that you might have in terms of why you love the sport. Do you feel the same way on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's there's still the same manic intensity that you always get with hockey.
Sure.
There's the same physicality. There's the same fluidity. But there's, like you said, there's a lot more skill out on that ice in the women's game than I think the average or the casual fan, I guess would be the better way to put it, might realize. And hopefully, what these young women at Robert Morris are doing on the ice will help a number of those casual fans kind of see the light, if you will, as far as the women's game goes. But yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to surmise that about the entertainment value of the whole product.
And what I think we could afford to focus on a little bit more at RMU is just how fun it is to go to a game at the Island. You're right on top of the ice in a time when it's pretty darn hard to get an affordable ticket over at PPG Paints Arena to experience hockey at a high level, whether it's women's or men's on the Division I level. From that proximity, I think it's just intoxicating. And that's a huge selling point for me, to get down to the Island if you haven't, to take a look at that. And we have, on press row, Matt, maybe the worst seat in the house, and we're still, 30 feet from the ice. So, yeah, that part of it maybe also gets ignored, too. So that's one thing that I didn't really take into account until I started working for the men's program 4 years ago. Let's talk generally, before I let you go, about the local amateur scene. You've covered local high school hockey, and the high school season's about to get started this week. In fact, they've already had plenty of preseason games and tournaments. And I mentioned the USHL Fall Classic is up at the RMU Sports Complex. But the high school hockey, the brand of that side of the sport, if you will, in Pittsburgh, I think it's been more of a slow burn. And to be clear, it's not like Minnesota. It's not like Massachusetts. It's not like Michigan here yet. But we're getting there. And I think that if you haven't given it a shot yet, if you haven't checked it out, and if your school didn't offer hockey, that's also maybe a stumbling block for some. I think you might be surprised at the quality of it and how much fun that is, too. So what was your experience like working in and around high school hockey in this region?
Well, it's grown exponentially, and I could go in circles about how much the Penguins have had to do with that, and the success they've had in the Crosby, Malkin, Fleury era. That certainly was a boon to the high school game in this area. But yeah, they're all fun programs to be around, and they appreciate that it's growing, that there's a different level of parity in the sport than there was 10, 15 years ago. You're seeing more northern area teams and teams from different parts of western Pennsylvania succeeding and going far into the playoffs. You're seeing more players from this area get recognized and recruited by major colleges. And it's funny you mentioned Minnesota because, we always used to say, jokingly but seriously that, we have an on-ice product here in Western Pennsylvania worth watching. We have that. We have much more media coverage, obviously, of the sport than we ever have before. We have a lot of what those other hockey hotbeds have. The only missing piece is, as you said previously, the fans. That's the next step to get a little bit closer to where those folks are in their neck of the woods. So, like you said, definitely, support your local team. Get down to Colonials Arena if you possibly can for women's and men's games, for that matter. Certainly a great time, no matter what seat you have in Colonials Arena. But yeah, to watch the Scholastic product become what it's become, and to have had a hand in that once upon a time, is a great thrill.
And I don't want to forget about some of the local club amateur teams like your S-Mark Stars, like your Pittsburgh Penguins Elite, that also push the quality of play up, and the Johnstown Tomahawks out in the North American Hockey League. You have them within a 2-hour drive. You have the Youngstown Phantoms about an hour and a half away in the top level junior league that is the USHL. So I'm going to keep trumpeting it. I know you will too, Matt, and let people know that there are other options. There is hockey besides the Penguins, and let's be honest, someday the Penguins aren't going to be Stanley Cup contenders every year. So I know that all the winning is intoxicating on the NHL level, but at the same time, the programs that maybe have escaped some hardcore publicity here, like your Robert Morris's, like your high schools, they're going to be there, thick or thin, and they will, they'll be providing that level of entertainment and that level of or just that grassroots level of hockey. You can get down to it and see what it's like when these players build up their skills and where they first take the ice. For me, that's exciting, and I know it's exciting for a lot of folks who just enjoy amateur sports in general, so it translates over. Well, Matt, you have a busy weekend. I'm looking forward to this. The Robert Morris women's schedule, it's incredible with all the ranked opponents, non-conference they're playing throughout the season, starting with St. Lawrence and RMU, of course, getting votes in the national polls themselves. So should be a terrific weekend down at the Island. We are looking at Friday and Saturday against St. Lawrence, and it'll just pick up from there. Go to rmucolonials.com for more information. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the time, and I'll let you get back to your preparations.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
That's Matt Popchock. I am Matt Geica. Yes, we sit right next to each other in the Joe Walton Stadium office over on the campus of RMU, but I thought he'd be awesome to talk to as the college hockey season begins officially this weekend in Pittsburgh. Back on the other side of this break for the third period of Geick's Got Game. We're talking Pirates and Jung Ho Kang. Yes, he still lives. And also a Tiger Woods meditation on the full season. It's been incredible. You knew I had to gush after the win last week. Stay tuned.
Well, go. It's green. Come on. Go.
God damn it, Brian. You need to calm down
Yeah,
with
I'm
the road
sick of
rage.
these people, these assholes.
The road rage, man. You got to calm down on the road rage.
Well, I want to get to where we're going. We have a lot of great stuff coming up. We're going to Falling Water,
Bicycle Heaven.
the Mattress Factory,
Tuck Knob.
Trundle Manor. All right, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Come on,
right,
come on.
right.
Too late now.
Right, come on.
Well, too late now. I got to keep going. I'm not going to sit here like some asshole.
Oh, come on, man.
All right, you're listening to the Culture Cruise. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com.
Your local Pittsburgh area museum podcast.
Yes, riversedgepgh.com, and come take a ride with us.
Back on Geick's Got Game, third period time. I'm fired up. It's Ryder Cup weekend. I'm a golf nerd. It's one of the best weekends of the year. In fact, one of the best weekends of 2 years because it only happens every 2 years. I am Matt Geica, and this is my show. Thanks again to Matt Popchock. We have a Matt overload officially on this program. Good thing Tyler's here riding shotgun. Tyler Zelenko, this will be his final show with me, so he's leaving for the 9 to 5 world. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Get away from this glamorous gig. It's tough to say, but man's got to do what a man's got to do. So I appreciate having Tyler alongside, and all the the bells and whistles that go with this show are basically attributable to him. With when it comes to especially the photos and all the smooth transitions into the lovely local music here on the River's Edge. And if you have been watching on Facebook Live or on riversedgepgh.com/live, you've seen the ad for International Podcast Day. We have a PodCon coming up on Sunday in Lawrenceville. Go to our website for details. We'll be well represented there, as you would expect. Again, riversedgepgh.com to see all the festivities that will be available locally for International Podcast Day. Let's talk Buccos. This will be the final show before our baseball season's over with in Pittsburgh. And I bet you didn't think we'd be talking about Jung Ho Kang this week, but we are. The Pirates announcing yesterday, out of the clear blue sky, that Jung Ho Kang will be suiting up for them in Cincinnati, as he'll go from instructional league, where he was rehabbing a bad hand, all the way up to the major leagues. And that'll be an abrupt shift. I wouldn't expect him to start tonight at Cincy, but who knows? These games are all about the future now for the Pirates. To wit, we saw Joe Musgrove get shut down. We saw Chris Archer get shut down. He was expected to start Sunday in the season finale at Cincinnati, but groin's acting up for him. A side injury is acting up for Musgrove, so the Pirates are saying, yeah, if it were important, we'd be pitching them, but it is not. And with the Pirates having gotten to 80 wins, it's their fourth best season since 1992. That is damning with faint praise, if I ever heard that, but it is true. It is accurate, and they have reached that point, and one more win will cinch them a winning record. And like I said last week, I think I care about that a little bit. It's been at least some injection of interest, of intrigue into the final couple of weeks. But now with Kang, the man behind me here at the Mr. Smalls Theater Studios, that's a totally different thing altogether, because with the way the pitching has come together for the Pirates in the second half, Trevor Williams is challenging for one of the best ERAs after the All-Star break in the history of Major League Baseball. He's like second or third last I checked, and he just pitched last night, gave up a couple of runs at Wrigley Field, so he won't be the best ever, but to be in that conversation is something. He really turned it around and gave the Pirates and their fans something to dream on when it comes to the rotation depth. Jameson Taillon's been right there in terms of top 10 ERAs since the break, too. So encouraging developments. Joe Musgrove, pretty darn good as well. But at the same time, you have a lineup that's been inconsistent, and you're looking at potentially the departures of both Josh Harrison and Jordy Mercer. They're not great hitters, but they're at the very least in the ballpark of league average. And average can help you win some games. If you have a lot of average guys, it's not the worst thing in the world. Maybe the problem for the Pirates is they have too many just average guys. But someone who can be above average in terms of run production is Kang. We saw it in 15 when he was a candidate for NL Rookie of the Year before his knee injury. We saw it in 16 when he came back from that injury and, despite a midseason slump, showed the type of game-changing power the Pirates have been looking for from their minor league system for years and years, dating back to Pedro Alvarez. And Kang looks to be a more polished hitter than Pedro ever was here in town. So if Jung Ho is good to go, if he's a viable option for 2019, that could help put their lineup in a more competitive spot. And, it's not going to take that many more wins compared to where they are this year to put them in playoff contention next year. Just a couple here or there, as Neil Huntington put it this past weekend, just a win a month, and we're right there in that wild card race. He's not lying, but a win a month is actually kind of hard to achieve if you just roll over the same group and expect them to improve. Nothing against Josh Bell, nothing against Colin Moran. Actually something against Colin Moran. I'm not sure he's that good either. But I think Bell will be okay. I think Polanco and Marte, and if they bring back Corey Dickerson, I think that's a promising sign. That's all a nice foundation, but you don't have that game-changing pop. And Jung Ho Kang can bring that. What Jung Ho Kang also brings is a disturbing past in terms of off-the-field problems and in terms of off-the-field crimes. Honestly, 3 times a DUI offender in his native South Korea. Also, lest we forget, the sexual assault allegations of 2 summers ago in Chicago. The complainant, the person who brought those charges or brought those complaints to the Chicago Police Department, stopped cooperating, so we don't know what happened there. It appears that case is is dead in its tracks. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's not to be ignored. It is, as we know, it is not to be ignored. As we've seen in recent years in America, this type of thing has been brushed under the carpet way too much, and I'm not trying to do that either. But it is definitely a dichotomy here. The baseball side, I think Jung can only bring a positive to the Pirates if he's healthy and ready to go and ready to compete. He's still in his early 30s, so he should be able to hit. There shouldn't be any major deterioration despite the time away from the major leagues. But there's also the moralistic problem here, and it's not to be minimized. It's not to be thrown away. And I saw many of you when I checked out the tweet in which the Pirates announced the news that Jung would be in their dugout this weekend at Great American Ballpark in Cincy. Many of you said, leave him down there. Leave him in the instructional league. Don't ever call him back up. The Pirates have a club option for him next year, a cheap club option by Major League standards, but it's no guarantee they'll bring him back. They could just let him go into free agency. And I think a lot of you out there would prefer that. Maybe your lives have been touched by drunk driving. Maybe you just find 3 DUIs to be a bridge too far. And I don't have an issue with any of that. And I don't quarrel with that. If you feel that way, then that's the way you feel. And if that would detract from your enjoyment of the Pirates, I think that's totally legitimate. And I also, I don't side with the people who say that he served his time, but they are correct. He has served his time in his native Korea. He didn't get the work visa last year, and he had to work to get it this year through the U.S. Department of State. So, well, he's gone through some punishments for sure for what he's done. And like I said, the sexual assault thing is tough to get your head around because the investigation never really went anywhere, but it is out there too. So if you're of the mind that you want the Pirates to move on because of all these off-the-field problems and with the way he's conducted himself as a human being in the past, then I don't have a problem. I also am one to give second chances, and if a person says they're reformed and if they make an honest effort, then I'm inclined to buy into the redemption story if it is legit and if it is real, and I'll talk about that with regards to Tiger Woods in just a moment. But the Jung scenario does, at the very least, bring some newsworthiness and some attention to the Pirates late in this season, which was looking like the definition of play out the string as they fly to Cincinnati for this weekend series. As 538.com said, they are the most average team in sports history this year. They're right down the middle in terms of runs scored, runs allowed. I talked about average in the lineup, average in the rotation, maybe some average in the bullpen too. It's not a very compelling team in that way if you want to look at it just in the whole. There have been some ups and downs, though, that have made things really interesting this year from my angle, and it concludes with this whole Jung Ho Kang scenario. So, yeah, I'll be watching. I'm not sure if I'll be approving of what I see with Jung back in a Pirates uniform, but I'll be watching, maybe against my better instinct, to see how this one turns out over the weekend. Back for overtime on Gike's Got Game. Keep it with us. I'm going to nerd out over Tiger. I'm going to geek out over Tiger, who has, in a lot of ways, united America in a time in which it needs something to collectively get behind. This is The River's Edge.
Dun, dun, da, 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 dun, dun, da, 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 da. It's 2017. We've cleaned shit up here in Pittsburgh. Something that the governor has done that is just, it's got me giddy. I want money from Hempfield. That's what I want. Give us your cash. But why would you put trees up in front of a restaurant that views the river? If I'm going to a river-viewing restaurant, I want to actually view the river. Am I crazy?
Catch River Talk with Brian Crawford, Mondays at 10 a.m. here on the River's Edge.
This is the real shit, folks.
It's overtime on Gike's Got Game, and I want to talk about a sport that has no overtime. It has maybe extra holes, but I'm talking about the sport of golf, and yes, I have been all over golf all year long. I'm normally a golf fan, as I was just telling Tyler. I watch a lot of it, and I think it helps when you play a sport, especially with golf. It may seem mundane or boring to some of you out there. It may seem slow-paced, but when you can at least understand some of the emotions that the players are feeling, if not necessarily those exact emotions on those exact stakes or with those exact stakes in those exact same places or with those exact same quality of swings and shots. But there is that there's that relatability factor is what I'm looking for there. And so that's always been a part of my life, a part of my sporting life is checking out golf throughout the year. And like I said, with the Ryder Cup, that's the end of it for a while in terms of meaningful golf events. But it's been such a banner year for the sport for me just because of one man. And I've watched maybe 90% of this man's swings and putts this year, and that's Tiger Woods, of course. He collected tour win number 80 last weekend in Atlanta at East Lake Golf Club in the Tour Championship. Beat 29 of the best of on the tour. So, it was a smaller field, but it was the best players from the PGA Tour, and you have to qualify. You have to keep your ranking high enough. If you're unfamiliar with how the PGA Tour's playoffs work, there are 4 tournaments throughout a month, and the field keeps getting whittled down little by little until you get to 30, which is a really small field for golf. In case you're not familiar, usually it's well past 100 that play in your typical tour event. But Woods took on all comers, and as he continued to work and grind and try to make adjustments to a changing body, working with that fused back, the fused vertebrae in his back, that surgery that appears to have saved his career, as he made changes to that, made changes to nutrition and exercise and fitness level and equipment. He finally got it all calibrated, did Tiger, and he played the best out of anyone last week. It was an honest-to-God victory, and it was his first in 5 years on the PGA Tour. And no matter what happens in the Ryder Cup, it's all gravy from here on out. No matter what happens in that $10 million match against Phil Mickelson on Thanksgiving weekend, which will also be fun to take in. But no matter what happens now, it has been a success for Tiger and for the sport of golf. And not just for the sport of golf. I saw so many folks on social media talking to people, just talking to Tyler now. He said he doesn't watch a lot of golf, but if Tiger's playing, if he's in contention, if he's playing well, then he will. And that's not an unfamiliar story. That's basically what we've been hearing for 25 years since he's been out there on tour. Well, maybe 25 is a little bit of a reach, but 22, definitely, when he joined the tour in 96. He's been must-see TV for a lot of folks, myself included. I've told this story many times, but he gets half the credit for getting me into the sport along with my grandfather. And I think my story is familiar. You hear it from so many tour pros out there, and that's what's great about this sport is that now guys like Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas, who grew up idolizing Tiger, they can play with him and against him. You don't really get that opportunity to have that cross-generational thing in other sports, but you do in golf. And you do get, every once in a while, no matter the sport, a chance to watch a transcendent talent, someone who's the all-time best, or at least right there with the all-time best. And Tiger, no matter how you feel about Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer or Sam Snead or whoever else from the game's history that might stack up with him, you have to concede he's on the Mount Rushmore of golf, as he so confidently put himself on his own Mount Rushmore earlier this week when he was asked by a reporter at the Ryder Cup. So Tiger's back confidence-wise, Tiger's back game-wise, and he's back culturally again. And it's the sports story of the year for me to see how he has returned from not just injury, but also, if you want to take the long view, the disgrace of the misconduct within his marriage, wrecking his marriage, all the tabloid stuff about his affairs with various women over the years, and how he strayed and how he, in a lot of ways, embarrassed himself and his family and the sport. And now you see everyone coming around, and not everyone, but most people within the sport and fans rooting for him to come back. And it's always been said that Americans love a redemption story. I just think humans love a comeback story. And we can all relate to messing up in some way or another, maybe not to the degree that he did and not on the stage that he did, but we can all relate to trying to redeem ourselves. And so there's that, but I feel like maybe that emotional side has been overblown a bit. For me, it's a triumph of an athlete, of a guy who had to adapt, like I said, equipment, adapt to his new body, adapt to his new swing, and make swing changes without the benefit of a steady coach for the first time in his pro career, by the way. It's such, if it can be an against-the-odds story for the greatest golfer of all time, it has been. It's remarkable how I spoke about the expectations game in the opener on today's show. It's remarkable how a guy who had 79 tour wins, who has 13 major wins, or had 13 major wins coming into this year, could position himself as a guy that needs help from the fans, who could use all the support he could get, who is fighting against time and fighting against, well, a strengthened golf field, a strengthened group of competitors out there that are tougher than perhaps what he faced in his prime. But I suppose age and injury does that to an athlete, and when you can rebel and revolt against those. I think we all get excited about that, especially if you are in your 30s and in your 40s, and now all these athletes are younger than you, and you realize that maybe your physical prime has passed as a competitor or just generally as a human being. So we can all relate to it in some way or another. And Tiger's play has always been inspirational because of just how darn good he has been, but because of the racial barriers that he crossed earlier in his career. You have to remember, when Tiger debuted on tour in '96, there were some courses in America that he couldn't play because of the color of his skin. Keep that in mind. That's not that long ago, folks. If we need another reminder that we're not as far along in America as we thought we once were, that's another one. That was just a generation ago that Tiger Woods, a player like him, a player of his quality, couldn't get on several courses. So that was a huge deal, too, at the start. And he opened up the sport with his charisma, with the way he played, with, yes, his background and his race. He opened up this game to so many people. And just the outpouring of love, perhaps personified best by the outright mob scene in the 18th fairway at East Lake Golf Club this past Sunday when Tiger and Rory McIlroy were walking up to the final green. Tiger up 2, easy hole. He was going to finish it off. He was in good shape. And to see him walk amongst his fans, that was a moving scene too. So much of golf has competed inside the ropes, but in that case, the ropes didn't matter. And Tiger was enveloped by his adoring public. You seldom see something like this that has brought so many people together, and it's a divisive era in a lot of ways. I don't have to tell you that if you watch the Senate confirmation hearings, the judicial branch perhaps in upheaval right now in America, and so many of us taking sides in that battle. There are still some anti-Tiger people, and I understand why, just like I understand why some don't want Jung Ho Kang to play for the Pirates anymore. But for the most part, we're seeing the vast majority of the American sporting public get behind this guy. Fellow athletes, people who don't even watch golf. It's been really inspiring, and it just reiterates to me how much sport can bring us together if we go about it the right way, and if we are taking an attitude of gratitude and an attitude of an appreciation like Tiger himself has in so many ways to what could be a second prime, or at the very least a revival of a career that at one time was looking like it was easily going to be the most prolific of all time. He still has some work to catch Sam Snead and Jack Nicklaus in terms of tournament wins, and he still has some work in some people's minds to put himself right back up there at the top of the world golf rankings and consider himself a favorite legitimately in any tournament that he enters. But what a year it's been, and it's been so satisfying to track it from day one all the way to now and to see his progress, and it's renewed my joy and my love for the sport of golf, but also just sports generally. I was riding high earlier this week, and I still am in a lot of ways because of the scene in East Lake and all the people who reacted in a positive fashion to see a legend revived. I don't think that ever gets old, does it? In my opinion, it does not. Thank you so much for tuning in to Gike's Got Game for this week. It doesn't get old to do this show or to have your feedback, whether it be on Twitter or Facebook, or if you're just yelling at your computer back at home or on the go, however you may be accessing the show. For Tyler Zelenko, one final time, say goodbye, Tyler. This is Matt Geico also saying goodbye for the week. Talk to you next Friday, same time, same place. God bless and have a great weekend.